It was at this moment that he knew.
He bucked up. Welcome. You're listening to Bucked Up with Sam Buck.
Now you fucked up. Now you fucked up. Now you fucked up. You have fucked up now. Now you fucked up. 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 Now you have fucked up.
Jeff or Jedi usually?
Jedi.
Jedi. Do you know, I call him Irish. Do you know him as Joey or Irish?
Joey.
That's so, because whenever people call him Joey, I don't put two and two together because I only know him as Irish.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm guessing that's probably similar to how people are with you when they call you Jeff.
Well, my original nickname was Phones.
Phones or Fonz?
Phones.
Phones.
Like headphones.
Okay. I didn't know if you had two cell phones on you at all
No.
times.
No. I just, because I was they used to say, when I die, they're just going to take my remains and stuff them between the knobs on the mixing board. That's what one person said.
Is that still your goal? Is that how
No,
you
not
wanna
at
go
all.
out?
No, not at all. But I never left the studio. I lived in the studio,
When did you start doing it? So I wanted to prepare, some stuff for you, but you have so much about you that I wanted to kind of start from the beginning of your history, your origin. When did you start making or working with music?
Well, my mom is a musician.
What did she play?
She's an opera singer.
Oh, wow.
Or was. She's passed on. But she started her career when she was 40 years old. And she ended up singing with the Metropolitan Opera and the City Opera, and she sang all over the world.
Did she have passions to do it? Of course she did.
Yeah,
Earlier
yeah.
than that. How old were you when she started?
Well, God, I don't. She was an opera singer as long as I remember. What she had a 3M made a mono reel-to-reel tape recorder that went by the name of Wallensack, and I used to use that to record stuff when I was a kid. And I'm talking about starting at 10 years old.
What would you be, just different sounds, or would you try singing?
Well, I figured out how to disconnect the capstan motor from the reel-to-reel motors so I could record with the machine in fast forward and record at the same time. And then I would, record my voice and then listen to the voice, and you could it was so slow that you could hear the vocal cords going clack 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 like
really?
that. Yeah, it was sounded like dinosaurs, but you could really the vibration of your vocal cords to make the sound. You could hear clack 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 because it would be
right,
recording at ridiculous speeds. And then I used to record my heart, run around the house and record my heart and stuff like that. And
so you weren't trying to make music at that time. You were just obsessed with the sounds and the
yeah, I'm a
kind of
sound freak.
a sound freak.
Yeah, total sound freak.
You're also a computer freak,
A computer freak and a musician and a director and a visual artist.
Well, because he was saying that some of the thing you're called Jedi because of some of the things you're able to do, or was there another origin of that name?
I made that up. I took the Jedi Master as a moniker. Mm-hmm. Not so much from the standpoint of being a Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
But more from the standpoint of a level of excellence. Because I looked at it like the Jedi Council. Each person had their own special powers, and they operated with integrity.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like when Neo goes into the oracles. you know, it's like each person has a special powers.
Exactly.
And so, that's why I took that.
And the reason I bring that up is because it seems like at an early age you did have this to figure that out and to just kind of take it apart and be able to figure that out just to hear the vocal cords. Sounds like it was a passion at a very early age.
Absolutely. I mean, I did when I was 10. I don't know who in their right mind would lend a 10-year-old a Bolex 16mm camera, but somebody did. And I made at the time there was a TV program, Ian Fleming with 007 stuff was really hot, and there was a spin-off from that called The Man from U.N.C.L.E. that was with Robert Vaughn, and they made all kinds of kids accessories, like a briefcase that had a little gun that would come out of it, spy, you know what I mean? Just all kinds of spy shit.
Yeah, I used to go to the Spy Museum in D.C. when I would visit as a kid, and I used to love all that stuff. And I actually watched the original Man from U.N.C.L.E. when I was
Yeah, so, I'd watched The Man from U.N.C.L.E., and so I made a spy thriller, and got the kids from the neighborhood to come over, and it was the boys from OK, the Organization of Kids Against CAT, Clean American Torturers. And it was it was black and white, and we used ketchup for blood, and then I recorded a portion of the Man from U.N.C.L.E. Television program.
Yes.
And edited out the dialogue and used that for the music track.
Oh, wow.
And so there was an after-school program when I was going to school, and this guy, he had taken supercalifragilisticexpialidocious and a spoonful of sugar and edited it together, just all messed up. And he said, put that back together again. And I was like, oh, that's easy. And I just put the songs back together again. And that's how I learned how to edit.
So you were you weren't taught that. You were just kind of born with this innate ability
I just understood it, from, and I remember my teachers, they had me come and give a talk about they were like, how did you know how to do that? And I was like, I don't know, I just knew,
Was your family, or you said your mom followed her passion at a later age in life, were they willing to help you along the way with they saw that this was your innate talent?
They were supportive. Yeah. I mean, I Matchbox cars, I did animation with them in 8mm, claymation stuff.
Wow. So you really you were at a young age very creative and just following your...
Yeah.
Looking back, so I am 23, as I said, and I feel honored. It's a weird way to put this, but feel honored for the passion that I have, because I see people who don't find their passion till later in life.
Gotta get it, gotta have it.
You have to stick to it. You have to hold on to it.
Absolutely.
And I feel honored that I have that, and I don't know where that came from. I try to look back and be like, was I born? Where did that passion come from? But you're later in life. Do you ever look back and be like, why me? Why did I learn all this? Why did I know all this stuff at an early age?
With me, it's just always been there. And I remember telling my dad, here, look, when you look at the soap operas, that's videotape. And when you look at the movies on the movie of the week, that's film. And he'd be like, how can you tell? I'm like, what do you mean, how can you tell? You can see it,
Yeah.
And so, passion, I told Joey Irish that the way I started recording bands in basements using broomsticks for mic stands and the mattresses for gobos.
Just figuring it out however you can.
Yeah. And, I took apart, I would take stuff apart. My mom told me when I was a kid, she came home and I had taken the vacuum cleaner apart completely wheels, everything. I didn't know how to put it back together again, but it was just like all in pieces in the living room. And my dad used to, when he went to the mechanic where he got his car fixed, they would give me pieces of cars, like just
so you
stuff,
could play with.
so I could take them apart and just levers and screws and bellows and just all that kind of stuff. So I would just always take shit apart.
That's so fun. So they were, those were your toys and stuff. I think about that kind of like, the reason I have a podcast is one of my passions is talking. I want to know how everyone else functions because I don't understand it. I don't know how I function. I don't know how anyone can be successful in whatever their field is. I want to learn that. I like talking. I like finding out about people. And when I was a kid, looking back at it, I didn't know this at the time, but like my parents would teach me how to talk to adults and take me out to restaurants where kids weren't allowed and bring me around, like not just like kid talk. I equate it to children who only eat like kid food, like chicken fingers and French fries growing up, and then they don't get like an expanded palate. I feel like I was opened to like a variety of viewpoints of the world because I was brought around so many different people as a kid. And that's kind of where my passion, I guess, grew from. Or I had it, and that was where it kind of like you taking apart the vacuum cleaner for no reason.
I'm totally passionate about it. And, I love it. I like audio and visual. I was always like in the AV club.
Would you record your mom?
Yeah,
singing?
I recorded my mom, but unfortunately, I recorded her in a studio that was kind of built for disco, so it was like no acoustics, and it was like pillows on the walls and stuff like that, I put her with headphones with a artificial spring Tapco reverb that was a rack mount unit made by a company called Tapco, and she was completely thrown off by that, and she, I didn't understand it at first, but what I understood afterward was that she uses the reflections from the room to find her pitch.
Oh, wow.
And, when she's singing with the orchestra, the stuff that's coming back at her, like not isolated with the headphones on, but like acoustically helps her find, what her pitch is and what her volume is and all that kind of stuff. So, when you put on headphones for the first time and you put a compressor on it and everything's the same volume and you have an artificial reverb, that was like completely like an acid trip or something for her.
I don't know if this is the same comparison, but I do stand-up comedy. That's another one of my passions. My passion is podcasting and stand-up. Those are the two things I've always wanted to do, and that's kind of my life passion. And when Corona came around, comedy went away for a little bit.
Yeah.
And there was Zoom comedy. You do it over the computer. You do stand up in front of a bunch of people who were also sitting on computers, and that was the only thing that was around while clubs were shut down. And when I do stand up, the thing how you know how to keep going is how your jokes land on the audience and how they react.
Yeah.
So like you hear the laughter and you need them to give you that like audible reaction back to you. And when you're through Zoom, it's that you put the headphones on and you're like, wait, what? Like, I don't know how to have this talk anymore because I'm not getting the same communication from the audience.
Totally.
Or from the room, I guess, in the way of opera.
Totally.
So I'm guessing she did not like that, and she...
No, she didn't like the way she, performed, but she's an artist, and so she never liked the way that she performed, but...
is opera one of those art forms that is best it is live, like it's not like a recorded art form?
Yeah. I mean, I was on... that makes me think of, I was on the road early with the Talking Heads, and they would go, it's like in the development of bands, the audience reaction as you're, on the road, and they would play more country-ish when they were down south,
Yeah.
It was like, because they play off the audience.
Right. I was just, I started and I didn't get to finish the Utopia, the new live Talking Heads.
It's not, that's David Byrne.
I'm sorry, the David Byrne.
Yeah.
But, I was watching that, and it was the reaction. How did you get? I wanted to go through your history, but how did you get on tour with the Talking Heads? How did that?
Well, I was building a studio with another guy in Norwalk, Connecticut, and word came through a family friend that this band, the Talking Heads, which I thought was like a totally weird name. It's like hearing the name of the band, The Police. You'd be like, what? You know?
Yeah.
And that they needed a roadie and that they wanted somebody that had a van. And I didn't have a van, but the partner that I was building the studio with had a van. So I suggested him, and he started doing gigs with them. And then he needed help, and he hired me. And he was working for $50 a gig, and I was working for $25 a day.
Wow.
And he would get pissed when we, like went to California in the van because he didn't make any money. And I was making money just sitting in the van.
Yeah.
And then I eventually, I did some recording with them. And
Was that early in their career? This was when
it
they
was
were
in
just touring.
the first record, Talking Head 77.
Okay.
And then I ended up doing, they traveled with like 9 or 10 guitars because they used different tunings. And I would basically be tuning guitars and guitar tech and stuff like that. And then...
Well, it is David Byrne, but in the Utopia, the drum set, each person has their own drum. There's not like a drum set. It is that very...
Yeah. And then, eventually that, went through a bunch of different incarnations in terms of tours. And then they were going to... kind of like towards the end, what I understood was that they rehearsed for like a year before they even played a gig. Mm-hmm. And then, at the end of when I was working with them, they were just completely fried. Like David would like spit up blood, at the end of the gig. And Tina had like a cut on her finger, like the one that she played the bass with. Mm-hmm. And she put new skin on it and it would bleed every night.
Oh.
And then they went to Europe, and when they came back, I was like, I was young, and I was like, I didn't have any money, and they were going to go to, where'd they do Remain in Light? They were going to record Remain in Light. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to convince my dad, can you lend me the money to get to the Bahamas? I was like, if I could just get there, you know what I mean? Then, and he was like, why should I lend you the money to go to the Bahamas? And I was like, but Dad, they're going to be working with Brian Eno. It's like, come on, Dad. This is like serious shit,
It's the same moment when you were a kid and you're like, how do you not know the difference between the videotape and the...
And he was like, well, I'd like to go to the Bahamas myself. No, I'm not giving you the money to go to the Bahamas.
Fast forward to him on the stage with Talking Head. Your dad,
oh my God,
on stage rocking out.
And then, and I'm in Chris Francis. He did a book recently. He put me in the book, and we've been in touch over the years. I mean, I ID'd with Chris and Tina.
This might be an ignorant question, but how does a band like that blow up without social media? I don't know. Like I've always wondered that. It's because it is the same way, but it's not. Like how you said they were practicing for a year.
I was a roadie. I didn't know that much about it, except that I knew that, they would play a gig, mm-hmm. and they would get a tally of like how many records they sold. You know what I mean? After the next day or so.
Yeah.
And at the time, what they were doing was really new and really raw. Mm-hmm. And what my partner was into, and what we were doing in the studio, was a completely different bag. It was, more fusion-oriented kind of weather report type stuff.
But you must have known they were something, because you said you left building the studio to go...
Well, they were the gig that we did while we built the studio.
Okay.
In other words, we were in this space, and we were building the studio, and we would go do gigs with them, and then come back and build the studio. And then we ran the studio as a rehearsal studio for a while, and rehearsal and recording studio. Mm-hmm. But we were into like Return to Forever, Chick Corea and Al Di Meola and all those kind of guys. You know what I mean? And we had there was a trio rehearsing in the studio. That was Miroslav Vitus, the bass player.
Okay, yeah.
And Kenny Kirkland, who's passed on, keyboard player, and Don Elias, who played with all kinds of people. He was played with Joni Mitchell and all kinds of people. And they were doing this really, high level jazz stuff. And I know my partner was like, "Ugh, this stuff sucks." You know what I mean? Like this punk kind of shit. I hate it. These guys suck. The band sucks. And I was like, "But it's a band." You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like they're like working together and they're great. So I was into it. And they recognized that, and I was enthusiastic about being on the road and everything like that. But I mean, we did. They flew, we drove, you know what I mean? And we're talking about, to Los Angeles, to Dallas, to Niagara, to Miami,
How old were you when this all happened?
I can't even remember, in my 20s.
But that was probably amazing learning it. Was that your first bout with the industry? The industry, you said you had your own studio, but like...
Well, I was building the studio with this guy, Gary, and he had the bread, and I had the muscle, and...
How'd the studio come along? How'd you move on from broomsticks and
Well, Gary had taken all these courses, so he knew the names of all the microphones and he knew all this technical stuff that I didn't know, and I just had a talent for I took apart my dad's stereo and figured out how to use it as a recording console,
Oh,
that
wow.
kind of stuff. And so I wanted to learn how to be in the studio and like what to do, and all that stuff. And I literally just thought, okay, I'm just going to literally live here. And I didn't have an apartment. I just lived on the couch in the studio. And it was a big deal for me to go to my girlfriend's on the weekends and have a hot meal. Except there was a diner next to the studio, so you could have a hot meal. But I mean, it's like take a hot shower and
But of course, it might have been tough in the moment, but do you look back at that and you're like, oh, that's probably when most of the growth happened, or most of my...
Well, that was it. Part of the growth was finding out that the best mixes I ever made were when I had to go to the bathroom really bad. Because, there's a reason why you go in the studio and, you have to, do it all at this one time. And I kind of thought... Okay, if I live in the studio, then I'm just going to have hit records, and that'll be that,
Oh, because you get kind of used to it, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's like, there's a deadline, you know what I mean, for doing stuff, and so I just lived in the studio. So, experimentally, yes.
You ever seen the movie Eraserhead?
I know about it.
It's a weird movie.
Yeah,
it's a weird movie, and I'm not even the biggest fan of that style, but he lived on the set of that movie for 5 years while filming it, and it took him 5 years. And movies really aren't supposed to take that long, especially a movie like that, but it's that he lived on the set, so it's when you say that, it brings me back to an interview I heard of, what's the guy's name who did Eraserhead? Oh, I forget. What David Lynch, yeah. Of just you're right. If you have somewhere to go, that'll push you to do something. If you have unlimited time, then you're just going to be trying to perfect things, but that never really comes.
But you also need that unlimited time to make a higher level art in certain summers, and then you also look back at it and go did I really need all that time? But really you do, what I mean? It's like if you're doing a painting and you had to get it done in a certain period of time, and what eventually I learned was that there was a reason to have a deadline, and there was a reason that that I didn't have, let's say, hit records, you know what I mean, just from living in the studio. It's not about that, but that I looked at it as these big bands, the Rolling Stones and these different people, they had all the studio time in the world. So I thought, okay, if I have all the studio time in the world, then, that would be a good thing. That'd be at least one slot checked,
Were you, so you said that you figured a lot of this stuff out as a kid. Did you have someone who kind of mentored you and showed you the way? Like
I
it
really-
seems like it's hard to learn a lot about mixing and mastering, especially in the early 70s, late 60s. Is that when you were starting?
Well, the studio, studio was basically, I mean, before we had the studio, I was like in a band house, and we had like cut a hole through the floor so that we could record the band downstairs, and stuff, and so I was like always like learning stuff, but in the end, I don't know. I mean, I just like experimented. You know what I mean? Through a lot of stuff. And I remember when I was in the studio that I spent like a year on what is center, and then a year on like what is EQ, and a year on what is compression. And by putting other records up, or like taking a cassette at the time, and like taking somebody's hit record and just like fiddling with the EQ and fiddling with the compressor and fiddling with all the different things that you could do to it. That's basically how I learned.
And you have to have passion to do that. Someone who just wants to do it but doesn't really have like a real love wouldn't spend a year studying these things, or wouldn't, live on the couch in the studio. I think about that is I lived on Cape Cod, which is like an hour and 45 minutes from Boston. And it's a pretty shitty drive, I'm not going to lie. But when I was working 50-hour work week, and every single day I would leave work, drive the hour 45 minutes to go do like 5 minutes on stage. That's actually where I met these two, was at those mics that I would be driving. So I'd work all day from 10 to 8 or 10 to 7, drive 2 hours to do 5 minutes, drive back, sleep, do it all again the next day for 5 minutes every night. But that's the only way that you're able to do it.
Yeah,
that's the only way that you're able to learn. And it shows with the passion that no matter what.
Yeah, but you also, I mean, the mentorship is, it's like I would listen to Pink Floyd and go like, why does it sound like God himself reached down and like plucked a guitar string that rang forever, into infinity? And why does my recording sound like a mosquito farted like from a telephone pole like 3 miles away?
Yeah.
Like, how is that? You know what I mean? How do I get that sound? How do I make it like, sound huge?
I feel that way with jokes. I'll hear a joke and I'm like, how does it seem like you just came out of that off the top of your head, made me laugh and learn, and I'm saying a stupid hack joke that like makes people giggle.
Yeah.
You know what it's the same thing.
It's art in motion.
And you focus on it. But I don't know how it's a stupid term, but spiritual you are. But there's this book, The Alchemist, that talks about omens, that shows that like when you do follow your passion, life gives you these like little gifts that you have to be on the lookout for, but it shows you that you're on the right path because it gives you these little like omens, these little gifts. And when I look back on my life being like, oh, I am following my path because I can see these clear steps that were given to me because of the work I put in, that I am following my passion. He was telling a little bit about the money thing, but are you spiritual? Do you see those at all in your life? Like
Every day.
Yeah.
Absolutely every day.
The omen.
Yeah. I mean, I think I told Joey about, I got a call from Hugh McCracken, who has passed on, and Hugh McCracken was like one of the most famous guitar players that you've never heard of, but he's played on everybody's record. I mean, everybody from Steely Dan to Aretha Franklin to John Lennon to, just everybody. And he said that Dr. John wanted some help, needed some help in his studio in the Hamptons. And so he said, remember, he's Dr. John, so charge him. And I was like, good, good. And, I went out to visit him, and I thought, okay, he's got to have like a big studio. He's got a big house. He's like rich, and everything. And his studio was in his bedroom, and it was like a keyboard with a Shure mic, and like an ADAT machine, and none of the stuff was hooked up, and that's where he created music. It was like a little sequencer, and he's like totally famous. I mean, number one hits and all kinds of stuff. And I turned around and I saw a picture on his wall that was a picture that I had downloaded a couple of months before.
Really? What was it of?
It was a picture of it was a 1948 Christmas calendar of a woman that looked kind of like Doris Day, and she had a white German Shepherd, which we had just gotten a white German Shepherd, and I was looking at different websites, and we came across like all this Americana stuff. Jack LaLanne, the exercise guy, had white German Shepherds. Disney did a movie called White Fang that had white German Shepherds in it. There was all this stuff, and I found this one picture on the internet, and this is early in the internet, and I said to my wife, can you download that? Like, that was like a big deal.
Right,
Downloading it, you know what I mean? The one picture. And she said, why? And I said, I don't know, I just like it.
And it's hanging up in his wall. On his wall.
And so there's this picture that I liked and was on the computer for a couple of months before I got asked to like go and see this guy's studio.
Yeah.
And I turn around and that picture's on his wall. And I'm like, okay, why is that picture on your wall? And he said, that's my mother. And I went, oh my fucking God. Holy shit. And of course I called my wife and I said, that picture that we downloaded? She said, yeah. And I said, he has it on his wall. And she said, that's his mother, right? And I was like, oh no,
Yeah.
I mean, that happens to me every day. Every day.
And that shows that you're on the right path.
Exactly. I mean, I worry at the end of a project where I'm like, where I've invested my heart, my money, everything I've got into it, and there's nothing coming in at all. And I'm like going, now when I get done with this, I'm going to be fucking broke. I'll be fucked up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's when I started saying money comes to me easily, and damned if it doesn't. I mean, and so, it's really that's kind of like the Star Wars thing, like pay no attention to that drone.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it works.
It does. Yeah.
It really does work. And so, I mean, my prosperity sayings and things, expanding on them. And I was once pining about a particular piece of equipment, and it happened to be like a 1960s style, or from a piece. It was a 2-inch 16 track tape machine, specific model, Ampex MM1000, and I just wanted it so bad. And I was just like, my whole heart was like, I want this freaking thing. It's like, this thing is so cool. It's so badass. I could make records with it and all this kind of stuff. And literally like a year later, somebody that I had known for a couple of years turned to me and says, I have something for you. And I was like, what? And he says, it's in storage. I'm clearing out my storage space, and, why don't you come and see it? And I went and looked at it, and the thing was like huge. You know what I mean? It was like, and I was like, oh my God, that thing's as big as a refrigerator. I can't take that. It's not even going to fit in the house. And I walked out of the storage space and went, boom! That's exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, that's the exact
That's
thing.
exact. The model, the year, the whole nine.
Wow.
And
How'd you get it into your house?
I hired a truck and got it. I mean, the thing was big.
Yeah.
And I never made any real records on it, but I tinkered with it, and then I eventually gave it to somebody else who really, really wanted it.
That thing probably has a spirit, and it was supposed to be given to you to work on, to then be given to the next person.
I believe in that stuff, and it's come from real life experience stuff. I mean, Joey, I'm a cancer survivor.
Okay.
And I was saying my prosperity prayers, and I got cancer. So it occurred to me that maybe the cancer was a good thing. And this kind of came after a dream that I had where I was kind of told in symbols that I wasn't going to die from it. So that probably had something to do with it. But, you know, when they take your arm and they like put a needle in, it hurts. And then when they like put chemotherapy into your arm, it actually hurts going in. It's painful. And so I made the decision to welcome the chemotherapy. So it's kind of like, you know, you take a bitter pill or whatever. And we used to play this. I mean, I remember playing a game. I don't remember when I did it, but you like put the water on and put it on hot, and then see how long you can hold your hand under the water.
Yeah, it's like hot potatoes. Yeah.
And I would counteract that by saying, okay, that's an extreme hot. So let me in my mind say that it's the extreme in the other direction, cold. And how long can I hold my hand under a cold, you know, thing and just like make believe it's the cold side, you know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, the idea of, you know, of me saying no, no, you know, to, okay, it's your turn, Mr. Jones. You know what I mean? Like, now we're going to put this stuff in you, which actually does kill you. It will kill you.
Yeah.
And it is poison to your body. And your body knows it.
And you know it.
And I know it
You're
intellectually.
Yeah.
You
Which
know?
is the worst part. 'Cause
Right.
That's
You know
all
what I
that
mean?
your brain's
Right.
telling you.
The idea is that will kill the cancer before it kills you. Okay? And so, you know, to say, you know, okay, let me suck this stuff in because it's healing me is like a complete opposite from like, no.
Right. That's the cold. That's the extreme cold.
That's the cold, the extreme cold. So, you know, that was, you know, and it wasn't easy. And I didn't do it all the time because I couldn't mentally, you know, it's like,
It takes a lot
because I run away in fear a lot, you know, but I did have the experience of doing that and saying, I'm going to do this and I'm going to, you know, like psych myself into this. And, you know, like any of the productions that I do, you know, for like heavy people, Wynton Marsalis and stuff like that, I have a mantra. This one thing that, you know, was nominated for a Grammy, I just said, I want the listener, when they're hearing this, to say to themselves, I've heard stuff like this before, but I've never heard it like this. And then, damned if, you know, somebody like, here, listen to this. You know what I mean? This is some bad shit. Put headphones on them and they go like, wow, I've heard shit like this before and I've never heard it like this. And I go like, yes, yes. So that intention, that kernel of, you know, of goodness or that positive, you know, the mantra that, you know, through which you live and the integrity of that mantra, the prayer, the positive reinforcement, the positive affirmations and all that stuff makes a huge difference in how, you know, day-to-day life goes. So
it's the idea of you can be living in hell or you can be living in heaven, and it's all about your mindset. Not that I follow, you know, those Christian ideologies, but it is the mindset that you take or the intent you give to something that is important. Like that's, I kind of think about that. I don't mean to keep going back to stand up and stuff, but with jokes, it's like, maybe this joke is about this one thing, but if I know and I spent my time and I put my intent and this is what I actually want you to learn from it, I feel like that can be, like I can feel the audience getting that. Like I could be telling a silly joke that it might be about a deeper subject, but because I'm giving it no, this is really something deeper, understand this, they do understand that, even though it's not with words. We think words is the only way we communicate, but it's not. It's really not.
no, it's not.
I could tell that through you and I having a real conversation now, or when I talk to someone through Zoom on an interview. It's a great talk, but there's not like the same connection. Like there's, other than the words that we're passing off to each other, there's like an energy that we're giving off to each other that then feeds into the conversation. And there's that with everything, and it's great. Did you have that when you were going through chemotherapy, did you have that mindset beforehand, or was that something that you had learned, you had to teach yourself because you were going through such a situation?
Well, it's like the omens that you're shown. The stuff continues to be proven to you. And, what I tell people now is it's like I follow directions. I ask for, there's like an underlying intelligence and knowledge, that we're all in touch with. And, that's available all the time. But it comes out, at peaceful times or in a quiet voice or, it's like, or a kind of summation of, of all the different stuff that we're thinking about. And we go like, oh, wait a minute. I could do this, which solves all of those various different issues. And so, I'm just looking to expand on that. It's like I have a certain amount of time left here, like hopefully, as much time as you, but probably less,
Yeah.
And there's something that since I was a kid and like mowing my dad's grass, I wanted to like make hit records and have a Grammy and, and all that stuff, and so I achieved that, and it was like not in the form that I expected it to be, but I knew it was coming. I could tell from the omens, I could tell what was happening. And, the way that we think of it is like, you get called, you run up on stage, you say, thank you very much, and stuff like that. The reality for me was, I was offered tickets from Dr. John, and I had to go buy a tux because I couldn't rent one because I'm like 6'8", and it cost $700.
I'm 6'4", so when I rented a tux for prom in high school, it was like $300. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. So, and I went there and they said, you can't get up on the stage. I said, yeah, but I produced the record. It was like I was a co-producer on the record. And they said, you can't get up on stage. Sorry. And so, when they called it, his manager was waiting down on the side of the stage and he ran up there and I was like, he's not going up there without me. Fuck that. And so I went to go up and my wife was pulling me back saying, you can't go on stage. And I was like, that's my whole life. My entire life right now, right this moment is walking up there. I don't care if you fucking pull the tux off of me and I go up naked. I'm going up there. And I ran up there. And, that having been through that experience and having it be like, it wasn't what I expected it to be, but then having the post of that, having achieved something which I had like spent my entire life wanting to achieve, I had to look at like, okay, now what? Now what am I doing? And now where am I going and what and all that kind of stuff.
What was your next step after that? What did you find when you asked that?
I want more Grammys. Well, that's one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it, it's like there's a post thing to that. It's like, if whatever it is, each person's different. Whatever it is that you truly want, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That we're afraid to get what we really want. We stand in our own way more
100%.
More than like anybody stands in our way.
Yeah, it's resistance. Yeah.
It's resistance. It's like, what if I go for it and I'm like this far away from it and I don't get it? Then I'll be crushed. So maybe I shouldn't try.
What if I get something not the way that I expected it, like
right.
you? And that's such a shitty thing about human beings is we are scared to get what we want, but then when we finally get it, we're like, okay, what's the next thing?
Well, I mean, I look at 65, I look at everything. It's like, okay, so I've survived drugs and alcohol. I've been sober for like 35 years. It's like I went through cancer. My wife said, like what was harder, going through a year and a half worth of chemo or getting sober. I was like, getting sober was fucking harder than this shit, and so I've been through all this different shit, and really now it's gravy. It's always been gravy, but now it's like, this is gravy. Okay, so I should be dead by now. All right, so I'm not dead. So this is
more to offer to the world.
This is great, okay? Each day is great. Each moment is great. Whether I feel good about it or not, the shittiest, most fucked up shit that happens, where I am the most angry, where it vexes me the most, is actually the stuff that historically I've survived through, and I learn shit from. So what I try to do is look at it as every single moment, every single thing, every relationship, Joey wiring the patch bay, you know what I mean? Fucking cleaning the corner in the fucking bathroom of my studio, you know what I mean? All of those different things, me getting really fucking pissed off that, that the work that I did was like totally not respected, you know what I mean? Where I went beyond, where I spent 5 months of every last moment, you know what I mean, trying to make something of true worth, and having it be completely not respected. All of those moments are a catalyst for growth. Why are we here? What is life? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's about growth. And so if every single thing that happens in every relationship, in every situation, and everything that I love and everything that I frickin' hate is part of growth, then why can't I embrace everything? And I used to really be confused with people that were very successful, and they'd say, it's all good, man. And I'd be like, how can you say that? You know what I mean? Because it's not all good, but it actually is.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what you were talking about, how you always knew. You even going back to the mowing your dad's lawn, like you wanted that hit.
Totally.
You knew, but you knew it's. I describe it.
I didn't know it. I mean, I wanted it. You know, I knew I wanted it.
Mm-hmm. Did you? Because I'm on the other end of that, and I don't want to speak because I feel like when I speak from before it happens, then it gets you blow the load, like you can't. But I feel like I'm standing on a train track, and I feel the train coming, even though I can't see it, and I know that if I just keep pushing, it'll work, even though I don't see it, And it is all good. It really is all good. And I don't know where I learned that mentality from, because not a lot of people have that, but it is, and it's scary. It's scary to You said that we're so scared of our success. It's scary to believe that it's all good. That's a terrifying thought, to be like, everything is going to work out the way it's supposed to, is a really weird thought, because it's not going to work out exactly how you planned. And those little diverges in the path, you can either stop or you can just keep pushing forward. And a lot of people do stop, I feel like.
Well, people give up the dream.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And
do you feel lucky that your mom followed her dream at a later age? Because then that my dad's a musician.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a job, and he did music on the side, but he traveled, he did all of that. He's a drummer, he still does it, all of that. And it showed me that it's good to have someone that you can see follow their passion.
Yeah, well, if you don't get it from family, then you'll get it from, somebody else. And it's important to love what you do. And it was important for me, when I was, on my deathbed sick, in the hospital for 3 months and stuff like that. I would ask the person that was taking the CAT scan or something like that, do you love what you do? Not that I could do anything about it. Not that I could say, I'm not working with you because you don't love what you do. But, you'd have a nurse that, that looked at it as like, oh my God, these fucking people. You know what I mean?
It's the same thing.
And then you have people that are healers. You know what I mean? That,
Yeah.
that love what they do, and that, you know, that's a part of their life and their being.
Yeah.
And you definitely see the difference. So, you know, and I would ask people, like, do you love what you do?
It's
You
you
know?
putting a mantra into your music while you're engineering it, and they can tell it's the same thing that those nerds, if they're putting their mantra into that, you can
Yeah.
tell in your work, whatever it is.
Yeah.
What was your first break? When were you like, oh, I actually am, a ghost is attacking me, I am successful? Like, when was your first break?
Well, I don't know if that would be the first job. You know what I mean? Or, I mean, my first job
When
was,
you were first recognized by your peers?
well, I mean, I'd just say my first job was doing editing for, like, talking books, taking out ums and ers and stuff like that. And the first real break that I considered to be a break, which was, you know, there was a lot going on before that. But, you know, the thing where I felt like I worked with somebody that was real world class, was when this guy, Dan Hartman, heard some of my mixes and asked me to work on his album. And Dan Hartman was, he was a bass player and guitar player. He's passed on, but he was, you know, someone that lived in the next town that he played with Edgar Winter, and he wrote a song called Free Ride that Edgar Winter did that was a #1 hit. And he also remember there was a song called If I Can Dream About You. He played all the instruments on that, and, you know, and so he heard, you know, some of the work that I was doing at this little studio in Norwalk, and he asked me to come to his place. And it was like, he was somebody that it's like, you know, when I walked into his garage, there was SVT amplifiers and stuff like that, along with his, you know, Porsche,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And then I, you know, went in his house, and he had like a studio in his house, and you know, he was hooked up. And you know, for me, that was a big deal. And
How old were you at that time?
Oh, I mean, this was let's see, I was probably about 25.
Okay. How old were you when you won your Grammy?
That was like over 10 years ago. So, but he was on a subsidiary of CBS Records called Blue Sky Records. And they had a couple of different artists. But I went and bought the record and left the price tag on it, and like gave it to my dad and said, "Dad, this is what I want to do."
I'm going to the Bahamas.
You know, like, you know, because he was like, always, you know, he was like, "Why don't you get a job at one of these corporations that, you know, you know, are in this area or whatever?" And I was like, "No, I don't want to do that." And then, you know, for me, he would always say, "But where's the monetary value?" And to me, it was important to show him this is something that was sold, you know, that I got paid to work on. And that was kind of like that was proof of my, of, you know, the industry. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And my dad was coming from a place of like, he was always supporting my mom. Like, he'd buy out Alice Tully Hall, you know what I mean? And then act as a promoter to, like, you know.
He was supportive of
You
her.
know, he was supportive of her, and he, you know, so he was like subsidizing her and like doing business arrangements for her and stuff like that, you know. And she didn't necessarily make money, but, you know, she got paid large sums. But, you know, you don't necessarily make, you know, a profit necessarily.
It's
you know,
more
doing-
investments, yeah.
So, you know, that was kind of like, that was a big deal for me.
When you were 20. Is that crazy? So you said you were 10 years ago was when you won your Grammy, and that's you were 25 when that happened. You were 55. That's 30 years in the business of you kind of starting getting your first job, and then the thing you wanted, the thing you wished for, happened 30 years after that. Was there?
Well, for records, yeah, but I mean, while I was still in Norwalk, Connecticut, I mean, I recorded all the music for a documentary film that was nominated for an Academy Award.
What documentary?
It was called Against the Wind and Tide. It was about the Cuban refugees that came into Mariel Harbor during the Carter administration.
The Scarface stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In that, yeah. And you know, so I mean, I was like making music and doing a bunch of stuff.
Right. Of course. I'm not saying that. Yeah.
You know, this thing of like winning a Grammy. You know what I mean? Was like that was a you know, I mean, my love for listening to AM radio and at the time ABC, you know, AM, which was Cousin Brucey, or WNEW FM with Allison Steele and you know, the other guy's name was Munoz. I can't remember. Brian Muni. You know, listening to Pink Floyd and listening to just these different records and wanting to be a part of that somehow. You know, that was a real dream, and you know, the wanting to be a part of, you know, popular music and respecting popular music as well. Yeah. You know, I mean, jazz musicians don't really respect popular music.
Yeah, I
Neither do classical musicians, but that's kind of normal. You know,
I'm a jazz and rap guy. Those are my a little bit of indie rock, but mostly jazz and rap.
Okay.
But the reason I bring that up is you stuck with it. Like it. I guess this is more for people listening, but it was 30 years before. It wasn't like. You can't just make things you have to put your work in, and you have to show your time, and you have to respect the craft and the art, and you have to really immerse yourself in it.
Something about my karma is that I'm like around at the very beginning of stuff, and it's happened like time after time after time that I'm around at the very beginning. It's usually like the record before somebody breaks, or you know, or I don't have. It's like I've never. It's something that's eluded me. You know, as I mean, coming up as an engineer, you know, I haven't really been able to like rest on. You know, now it's not really possible. You know, rest on like, you know, making royalties off of, you know, some hit record or whatever. And that was always part of my dream. You know what I mean? It's like I want to take those royalties and then like do other shit with it. You know, but I can't remember where I was going, but
no, it's no problem. You started out. Joey was telling me that you started out. You did do a rap. You did Public Enemy.
Yeah,
that was early in rap.
Totally.
Like
it wasn't even respected as music. They didn't even consider it to be music.
Exactly. Who were the Dead Poets? Were probably the first. But that was really early. Why did you choose, like, how did you feel about it when that was first coming out?
I love music. So I'm like, you know, with the Talking Heads, I was like, but they're a band. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And with the rappers, I mean, see, I grew up in we were the only kids of color, not in the school, but in the entire school system. So I'm a truly suburban Negro.
Yeah. Where'd you grow up?
You know, in Wilton, Connecticut.
Okay.
And so culturally, I was never tied into black culture. And I was always scared with my cousins, like from Westchester or whatever, that were all, you know, culturally, you know, tied in with black culture. I felt like I wasn't fitting in because I was like from this completely lily white town where there wasn't like any other black people at all. And
how was your town? Was it welcoming, or was it did you feel like an outcast in your town too?
Well, I mean, I was very popular. I was the only person of color.
Yeah.
And, my dad put up with, a lot of, my mom's basically said, in the South, they'll call you a nigger to your face. In the North, they won't say anything until you try and go out with their daughter. And that I found that to be true.
Mm-hmm.
And so, me entering into the rap thing was, they'd say, like, why don't you go with Mickey D's? And I'd be like, what's Mickey D's? You know what I mean? Like, McDonald's, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, it was like a learning experience in that respect. And, coming up, there was a famous rap studio called Chun King.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And John King, that was like named because they had they were in Chinatown, basically, and they would order from this place called Chun King. But John King, who was, the owner of that studio, he started the studio in his apartment on Broome Street, and I used to do mixes for him, like on Broome Street. And then, we had, a very light relationship through for a number of years, and I would like call him up, and I'd be working in the film business, doing production work and stuff, and I'd ask him for like, you got any work for me, and so on and so forth, and he was up there in the music business, and he'd throw me in with like Jam Master Jay or
oh wow,
or different people, and so it's like the one of those sessions was like another night at the factory, making whatever $15 or $11 an hour or whatever. And, I tracked Bring On the Noise or Bring the Noise for Public Enemy. And then, then did mixes for this. It came out as they had an EP that came out that was coordinated with the release of a movie called Less Than Zero. And did that. And that like hit big time, just hit. Mm-hmm. And I was so out of it in terms of not being in the rap culture, not being in the in the club culture, not and all that kind of stuff. I was like working in the film business. I didn't even know that it was a hit until like some guy said, "You mixed that? Oh my God, that's like huge!" And I was like, "It is,
Wow. So it wasn't even in the culture, wasn't it?
It wasn't. I mean, it wasn't in my in my realm of things.
That's so funny.
And so. I mean, at one point, like, Russell Simmons, I was in a session one time with Russell Simmons and Rick Rubin together.
That's insane.
And they were like arguing over like the drum beat, you know what I mean, on a DMX drum machine, like, oh, that beat sucks. You know what I mean? No, here, try this beat. No, that sucks. You know what I mean? And, if you're in New York and you're doing stuff in studios in those days, you run into people.
Of course.
You run into like different situations and stuff like that. And unfortunately, when I came to New York, I was working in this small studio in Connecticut, and I like literally couldn't get arrested here in New York because you had to have like New York experience in order to like get in. When I went to Electric Lady, I went to, Hit Factory, I went to all these different studios. And, they like initially said, okay, it sounds like you know what you're doing. And then they're like, we got these other people that, and I'd be like, they don't know what they're talking about. You know what I mean? It's like, I know the equipment. I know how to hook it up. I know how to, I know how to operate it.
You have to like prove yourself.
You have to prove yourself, but you have to be in the scene per se. And, for them to trust you. And so, that's part, so I got involved with these guys from Intergalactic Music who were these wacky art student guys. I got one of them now. He has a thing called, if you look up on Instagram, the Invisible House. He in Joshua Tree, California. He's produced a number of feature films and stuff like that, and he's a real entrepreneur. And they had George Martin's Old Neve, and they had the first Fairlight in New York.
Oh wow.
And they were real wacky, forward-thinking guys, but they also didn't, make their leasing payments, and they were artists, and all this kind of stuff, and And, so I got involved with them, and, I used to commute backwards, to Connecticut to do some sessions, and then I would started doing sessions in New York, and, there's let's see, Planet Rock, that,
Yeah.
play at your own risk. I recorded the vocals on that.
Did you?
Yeah.
Wow.
With Arthur Baker. And,
Wow.
those guys came in from like Boston, and they got paid like $100 or something to like do to do the vocals on that thing. And it's like,
Yeah.
Arthur was an early ripoff artist, in the business. But I mean, if you're around, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
In those days, you just meet up with people and eventually there's a bunch of different things that I worked on that were promoted, that became hits, and stuff that I
Did
didn't
those
even-
always feel right, or did you feel like a surprise when those songs blew up, or were you like, no, that makes sense? Like I'm on the
At a certain point in the business, if you had anything together, you made records that got promoted because they were like, it's like the people that
Do you think there's too much now? Is it tougher now with the
I
amount?
think it's way tougher because everybody's got a home studio and and that's great and it's not great. I mean, the great thing is that composers can like actually get the stuff that they always heard in their head because they can make it at home now.
Yeah, but it floods the market.
It floods the market as well. Right, exactly.
Is that tough with you? Like, you said you were an early adopter to all these things. Is it hard to then adapt to what music is now? Because I feel like it did change over the past, 10 years with streaming and everything. Just the whole amount of music that can be put out. Is it...
The thing that I fight for is quality. Mm-hmm. And the stuff that's lost from when I was growing up is you had album art. And you were able to look at, who made the stuff and where they made it and, who was involved with making it. And that stuff is lost now because you don't get that unless you, buy the whole album and you get, the extra package in iTunes and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But that was a big part of the experience was kind of like running your fingers over this thing that you would be listening to, and you'd go okay, these people made this thing, and it was it was a collaborative effort.
Or you could hold it and be like, I was a part of this.
Yeah, exactly.
This is part of me.
And so, as a producer, where do you get the producer credit now? Where is that listed? I mean, you could go to All Music.
Yeah,
but
well,
they fuck stuff up too. So there's a bunch of stuff that I've done that they don't have me listed on.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
I think that's honestly probably a good thing about rap music and about there's a rap collective out of Buffalo, New York called Griselda, and they're very big about the artwork and creating, knowing who mixed and mastered it and who produced it. And rap in general is very big on production being part of it now. But this collective, this group out of Buffalo, they show that it's a whole team that puts together the song, and that
it's the equivalent of a feature film.
Yeah, and you respect it, I think, more instead of being like, oh, that guy did that song, great job.
In feature films, the unions dictate that they have to show the credits. Mm-hmm. And now if you watch it on TV, they shrink it down, they play a commercial at the same time, and it goes so fast that you can't read it.
Yeah.
But they are obligated legally to put the credits in. And that's not necessarily so in music. I mean,
we're in the Wild West, would you say, of music? Because with stream, there's no formula really yet. We haven't figured it out.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Wild West everywhere, all the time, for everything. Really.
That is true.
You know what I mean?
That is true.
I mean, Trump has proven that.
Yeah.
I mean,
anything. Yeah.
Anything goes. You don't have to play by the rules to be successful. Mm-hmm. But for me, I've always had the, going to like the kind of universal knowledge concept of, you know, of the universe. I've always felt that if you create art which is of high enough quality that it's recognized by everyone, or, you know, people that do recognize art, and even people that don't know art,
Yeah.
still react to it or still appreciate it or go like, that's, you know, there's something about that, you know, that I think is like better.
Yeah.
And so that's where I put my time and energy. Is making that. I mean, it's not uncommon for me to listen to the same song and work on the arrangement for a specific song for multiple days. I mean, I mixed a record for a singer in Copenhagen. I played a bunch of stuff, played percussion, played keyboards, and it took a month. But when I was growing up, it would take a year for a band to make a record.
Yeah.
Easily. And those records are the ones that still are groundbreaking in their own right.
Timeless. You can tell when music's timeless.
You can tell when music's timeless.
There's not a lot of timeless music coming out nowadays, and there is some, but you can tell with the quantity. It's very low numbers of
David Bowie. Timeless. Mm-hmm. Okay. Heroes. I saw a live performance on, you know, Sterling Campbell, his drummer, had a thing in Rolling Stone, and they had, you know, it's online. They had a live performance of Heroes. Off the fucking hook.
It could have come out yesterday, and it would have been amazing. Still,
Totally. And if you look back and you see, there's an early video on YouTube of him performing at a songwriting contest, the Space Oddity, and he's playing it with the equivalent of like the Doc Severinsen Tonight Show band. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're like going like, what the hell is this asshole, you know, doing? What are these arrangements? The fucking song is intact. And he's like a hippie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But the song is intact. Aretha Franklin, Respect. Timeless. You know, Steely Dan, Asia. Timeless. Okay.
Well, you know who I've been listening to a lot to recently, who is timeless, and it's very different from that list. I don't know if you, but a lot of Fela Kuti. I love it, like expensive shit. The old. I don't know if do you know Fela Kuti at all?
Totally not. Never heard the name before.
He's an old African jazz composer and musician. He puts together these pieces. Each song's like 15 minutes, and they're amazing from the 70s. 60s, 70s, amazing, and I could just listen to the same like 15-minute song over and over again. It's so timeless, and it really shows, you know, things that are supposed to stick out will stick out.
What you know? How do you base that timelessness? How do you base like the timelessness and the feeling, the hair going back on the back of your neck when you listen to like an Aaron Copland piece? You know, I mean, those things, as I've explained to Joey, you know, I see it as I'm coming from engineering. We exist within a certain frequency range. That's our existence. You know, if you want to say lower is when we're asleep and higher is when we're like, you know, had a couple of coffees or something like that, you know, and within that frequency range, that's as far as we can see, let's say with our five senses. Okay.
Yeah.
But the universe and, you know, the laws of the universe and all this stuff are so much, there's so much more there. But everything is frequency, everything has a frequency, and all frequencies have resonance in the universe. And so, you know, I look at it as like, okay, if I'm in meditation and I've dropped my conscious frequency to be lower, I'm then in sympathetic resonance with higher frequencies, and I can see or receive information or, you know, or whatever from you know, the alternate parallel coexisting in the same space universe.
I 100% agree. Meditation,
and so,
done. Yeah.
You know, when you look at music and, you know, when you have tempered tuning, which is tuning on a curve, before tempered tuning, the musicians that were commissioned by rich people would tune their instrument to the key that the piece of music was composed in.
Yeah.
They would choose the key based on its relationship to color, because they had like a spiritual, you know, connection
Yeah.
with, you know, the frequency of color, which is a frequency. And, you know, when Bruce Swininen, however you say his last name, the guy that, you know, that engineered all of Michael Jackson's records, he saw color when he mixed. And so those things that are in tune, quote unquote, you know, resonate with all of our hearts or beings.
And that's beautiful, and that's why things become popular and timeless and
Yeah.
help us.
Yes.
That's why certain songs connect to certain people and help them, or
Yeah.
push them to become better or do better, or and you're a big part of that. You're a big part of that to a lot of people. Music that you've made has helped a lot of people, and that isn't something that can be looked upon lightly. You've made a big impact.
That's the ultimate goal, in my opinion. I mean, when you asked if there was a mentor that I had, there was a guy that lent me a Nagra reel-to-reel tape machine. That's like something that cost maybe about $4,000 or $5,000 at the time. And I was like in high school. So this is a guy that like lent me a $5,000 professional piece of equipment. You know what I mean? And I was like, you know, 15 years old. You know, I mean, my wife suggested that, you know, we let my daughter play my trombone from when I was in high school band, and she wrapped it around a tree. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
So this guy had the courage and the ability to see enough, you know, what I was or what I was trying to do or whatever, to like lend me this piece of
He
equipment.
felt your frequencies.
He felt my frequency, and you know, when he was on his deathbed, I wrote him a letter and thanked him and said, you know, I want you to know that changed my life, and I've now, like, you know, worked with Wynton Marsalis, I've done this, I've done that, won Grammy, blah, blah, blah. And his daughter and his wife wrote me back after he passed away and said that was the most important, you know, so that is our legacy. You know what I mean? That's my legacy. That's the most important thing is that I want to change people's lives with music. I look at it in this day with Trumpism and, you know, and anti-maskers and all these different people, that it's the artist's job to lead. And that that there's no going back, that we're like losing time as far as I'm concerned. Everything that he did environmentally, you know what I mean, rollbacks and all this stuff. I mean, the business people love it, and the guys that are like builders love it. As far as I'm concerned, if we don't all act together, act as one, as the human race, then we're fucked.
Yeah.
So, you know, that kind of outlook is really important, and pointing in that direction. That's what artist's job is to have that kind of vision. That's what Dr. John did. I mean, I was mixing Dr. John's, did this thing, and he had a song called Time for a Change, okay, that he wrote like long before Obama like came out with that as his slogan.
Yeah.
And you know, he put me in the studio with Eric Clapton, and we did guitar solo on it, and I like made a mix of it, and a friend of mine did a video to it, and the video's killing. And I told his management, I said, get that on YouTube now. You know what I mean? Because it was right on the crest of when Obama, and the thing, as far as I'm concerned, would have, you know, blown up, or, you know, would have made a big difference. And the video was about you know, listening to your heart, and, you know, not, you know, just falling for money and and all that stuff. And you know, they basically refused to do it, you know what I mean? And you know, and they were like, you know, we'd have to ask Eric, you know what I mean, because he's in the film, and whatever. And I was like, just, I'll mix the rest of the record in a week. Get that thing out there. Like have it be globally out there.
Yeah.
And that's really, the secret. And, so I look at Dr. John as, he was a shaman, he was a sage, he saw the stuff in advance, he wrote a song, we produced the song, you know what I mean? And he, and it was right. And a lot of people, that are in touch, the John Lennons and the Dr. Johns and the people that we really admire, they're all on the same cusp.
Yeah.
Of what's going on, what's happening, culturally and in terms of pushing society into a particular, in a particular direction, just, the song Imagine, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. So, those kinds of things which make a difference culturally, spiritually, that affect people on some kind of global, basis or mass basis, let's say.
Or on a personal basis, even the way that Irish talks about you. You helped him, or the way that you wrote that letter to that guy, and that was his interpersonal, like helping people and showing that you care on a small scale is also important, and I don't think enough people do. It's just showing that after something, like if you had never wrote him that letter, he might have known that you were happy, but that probably made the last parts of his life a lot more fulfilling, knowing how much he really helped you.
That's what I would want. Mm-hmm. I'd want to know that something I did, and we don't know how we affect other people. We don't. There's stuff that we never.
We have blinders on to our own.
Yeah, well, we're in our own, trough.
Yeah, exactly.
Going, doing our thing or whatever. But that acknowledgement. Sometimes having that acknowledged, it's extremely important, and knowing that I affected a young mind. I taught acoustic recording at City College for a few years as an adjunct teacher, and I ran into all kinds of problems, that were dealing with the corporate structure and the university and their rules and whatever. But there was one message that came in the middle of this fucking hellstorm that I was going through of learning, and it was a guy. He left me a message. I didn't even talk to him, and he said, "Jeff, I just finished setting up for the orchestral recording of Samuel L. Jackson, A Time to Kill, and I have to tell you that every single thing you told me was exactly the way it was. And, I knew, what the direct boxes were. I knew which the headphone boxes were. I knew how to conduct myself. And I just want to thank you for, what you taught me." That made my entire year.
You're talking about it now. Look at how it stuck with you this much later. That is a really important thing to happen.
So, knowing that, and, there's some students that I have that, we're still in touch today, you know what I mean? They bring their daughter by or whatever, and it's like, it's important stuff.
It is.
You know what I mean? It's really important.
And that's a really beautiful sentiment, and I think a good place to end this. I really appreciate you giving up your time and having this conversation. I feel like I learned a lot, and I feel like people listening have too, and I appreciate you giving up your time.
Okay. Well,
thank you very much
for having me.
Of course.
It's an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a website you want to plug, or?
Oh man, I'm so unwebsited right now. Look up Winton Harvard on YouTube.
Winton Harvard on
Yes.
YouTube. We'll plug that.
And that's somebody that's helped me a lot, Wynton Marsalis, and he speaks about the history of music, the history of jazz, the political history in the United States, and he ties them all in together.
Oh, wow.
And it's freaking serious shit. He did 6 lectures over a 2-year period, and I've been working on the second lecture for a year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that lecture took a couple of years to complete.
Wow.
So
I will definitely watch. I love that. I watched the Ken Burns documentary on the history of jazz when I was younger, and that was great. I love just learning about the history and everything, especially being a rap fan. You need to know the history, and you need to see where it came from.
yeah.
So thank you very much for being on. Thank you to everyone who listened. You can like, subscribe, check it out on YouTube, and we'll see you next week.